The mountain man bought an abandoned cabin for $1. Inside, a woman had been waiting for him. He spent years working jobs he didn't like, living in apartments where the walls were thin, and the air was always heavy with the smell of machines and burnt coffee. But in his heart, he had always dreamed of a different life, a life away from the crowd, a life where the stars shone clearly and the mountains were his neighbors. The opportunity came one gray afternoon when he was browsing through the local newspaper. A small ad in the corner caught his eye. Abandoned mountain cabin $1 must be moved in within 30 days. At first he laughed. A cabin for $1. It had to be a joke, but something about the words pulled him in. The thought of owning a place of his own, even in the middle of nowhere, made his chest tighten with excitement. Without wasting another minute, Elias packed a small bag. He brought only what he truly needed: a sturdy jacket, some food, a first aid kit, and a worn-out hunting knife he had inherited from his father. The rest of his possessions, mostly useless clutter, he left behind. This journey was not about comfort. It was about survival, freedom, and the quiet strength of being alone in the wilderness. The road to the cabin was long and winding. Cars gave way to dirt paths, and the city's hum was replaced by the whisper of the wind through pine trees. Elias drove slowly, taking in the scenery that felt more like home than he had ever known in crowded streets. Every mile he moved deeper into the mountains. He felt the weight of city life falling off his shoulders. Finally, after hours of driving, he reached the turnoff marked in the ad. A narrow path led upward through dense forest. The trees grew closer together here, their branches almost brushing the roof of his old truck. The air was fresher, cleaner, and carried the smell of wet earth and pine needles. Elias parked his vehicle and stepped out, stretching his stiff muscles. Ahead, partially hidden by overgrown shrubs and moss-covered rocks, was the cabin. It was small and made of weathered wood, the kind that had seen decades of snow, rain, and sun. The roof sagged slightly, and one window pane was cracked, but there was a certain charm to it, a feeling that it had survived everything the mountains had thrown at it. Elias' heart thumped with anticipation. He walked up the creaking wooden steps and hesitated at the door. Dust hung thick in the air, and the faint smell of decay reached his nose. With a deep breath, he pushed the door open. The cabin was dark but not entirely empty. A single lantern lay on a table, though it had long since gone out. Cobwebs stretched across the corners, and a layer of dust coated every surface. For a moment, Elias wondered if he had been mistaken. Surely no one had lived here for years. But then he saw her. A woman stood in the center of the room, as still as a statue. Her hair was dark and long, cascading over her shoulders, and her eyes were sharp and alert. She was dressed in simple clothing, practical for the mountains, and held a small, intricately carved staff in one hand. Her presence was calm but commanding, and Elias felt a shiver run down his spine. "Hello," he said cautiously. I didn't expect anyone to be here." The woman's lips curved into a faint smile. "I've been waiting for you," she replied, her voice soft but strangely confident. "I knew you would come." Elias froze, waiting for him. How could she possibly know that? "I think you have the wrong person," he said, though his voice sounded weaker than he intended. "No," she said, taking a step closer. "I know exactly who you are, and why you were drawn here." "The mountains, they called you, didn't they?" He blinked, unsure what to say. He had felt the mountains calling him, yes, but no one could have known that. Yet here she was, a stranger, standing in an abandoned cabin, claiming to have waited for him. It was impossible. "I don't understand," he admitted. "Who are you?" "My name is Amara," she said, "and I've been here a long time, watching, waiting, not for anyone else, only for you." Elias ran a hand over his face. He was a rational man, but he also knew the mountains taught lessons beyond reason. He decided cautiously to play along. "All right, Amara, why wait for me? What's going on here?" She looked around the cabin, then back at him. There are things in the mountains, secrets that humans have forgotten, but someone has to find them. Someone has to protect them, and that someone is you. Elias frowned. Me, I'm just a man trying to get away from the city. Amara's eyes softened. Exactly. Because you are human, you are adaptable, you are resilient. That is what is needed here. The mountains test those who enter, and only those who can endure survive. He glanced around, noticing details he hadn't before. A small wooden box under the table, strange symbols carved into the walls, a map pinned to the far wall with red marks tracing paths through the forest. This cabin was more than abandoned. It was prepared. For him. I don't know if I can do what you're asking, Elias said quietly. You don't have to know yet, Amara replied. For now, you just have to stay, learn, observe. The mountains will teach you what you need to know. Elias sank into an old wooden chair, his mind racing. He had expected a quiet life, not whatever this was, and yet despite the strangeness there was a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. A spark of excitement ignited within him. Fine, he said after a moment. I'll stay for a while, but I need to know more. Amara nodded. And you will, soon. But first, you need rest. The mountains are not kind to those who enter unprepared. As Elias settled into a dusty cot in the corner of the cabin, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life had changed forever. The air outside was crisp and cold, carrying the scent of pine and earth. The stars shone brightly through the cracks in the roof, more vivid than he had ever seen in the city. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in a long while he felt alive. Hours passed. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying secrets he couldn't yet understand. And inside, the cabin was quiet, except for the faint sound of someone moving about, preparing, waiting. Elias didn't sleep much that first night. He kept hearing small noises, the creak of floorboards, a distant rustle, the soft whisper of a voice he couldn't understand. But fear did not grip him. Curiosity did, and curiosity, he knew, was a powerful motivator. When dawn broke, painting the mountains in shades of gold and silver, Elias stepped outside. The air was cold but refreshing. The mountains stretched endlessly around him, wild and untamed. He could feel their pulse, their energy. He could feel something waiting. Come, Amara said softly behind him. He turned to see her already standing on the porch, gazing out at the peaks. There is much to see, much to learn, and the mountains are patient but not forever. Elias nodded. Whatever this journey was, he had taken the first step. The mountains had called him and he had answered. And somewhere, deep in the shadows of the forest, he could sense eyes watching, waiting, assessing. He didn't know it yet, but his life, and perhaps the future of the world, was about to change in ways he could never imagine. Elias awoke to the sound of birds singing in the crisp morning air. Sunlight streamed through the cracks of the cabin walls, creating patterns of gold on the worn wooden floor. For the first time in years, he felt rested. The city, with its constant noise and pressure, seemed like a distant memory. Here in the mountains, life was simpler yet more profound. He stepped outside the cabin and took a deep breath. The cold mountain air filled his lungs, sharp and invigorating. Pines swayed gently in the wind, and somewhere in the distance, a deer grazed by a stream. The forest was alive, untouched by human hands for years, and it made Elias feel small, but not insignificant. In this wilderness, survival mattered and every decision had weight. Amara was already awake, tending to a small fire near the cabin entrance. Her movements were precise, almost ritualistic, and Elias watched in fascination as she arranged sticks and leaves to coax a flame from a pile of kindling. There was a calm confidence in her actions that suggested she had done this countless times before. "Good morning," Elias said, stepping closer. "How long have you been out here?" "Long enough," Amara replied, her dark eyes meeting his. "Long enough to know when the right person would come." Elias frowned. The right person for what? Amara gestured to the cabin, to the forest surrounding them, and finally to him. "To protect what is hidden here, to survive what is coming, and to learn what most humans have forgotten. Elias felt a shiver run down his spine. He had come to the mountains for peace, not mysteries. Yet something in her tone and the way she spoke made him believe her. The mountains were dangerous, yes, but there was also a strange pull, a sense of destiny. "You're saying I'm special?" he asked, a hint of sarcasm in his voice. "Special in the way that matters," Amara said softly. "You are human. Humans have a strength the universe has always underestimated. It is adaptability, ingenuity, courage. You have these traits in abundance even if you do not know it yet." Elias chuckled nervously. "I'm just a man who wanted a cabin in the woods." "Exactly," she said, smiling faintly. "A man who can survive alone, who can think clearly under pressure, who can endure pain, hunger, and fear. Those are the qualities that make humans formidable." Elias felt a mix of pride and confusion. He had always known he could handle himself in the wild, but he had never considered that anyone might see it as extraordinary. Amara handed him a small metal cup filled with water. The water was cold and fresh, tasting like it had come straight from the mountain stream nearby. Elias drank deeply, feeling energy return to his limbs. "Come," Amara said, motioning toward the forest. "There is something I want to show you." Elias followed her down a narrow path, overgrown with ferns and moss. The air smelled of wet earth and pine, and the forest seemed to hum with life. Birds chirped in the canopy, and the distant sound of running water guided them forward. After walking for nearly half an hour, they reached a small clearing. Sunlight poured in, illuminating a stone structure partially hidden by vines. It was not large, but it was clearly man-made, though ancient. Symbols were carved into the stone walls, unfamiliar and intricate, yet strangely beautiful. "This is why I've waited," Amara said, her voice reverent. "This place holds knowledge, knowledge humans have lost, and it is your duty to protect it." Elias approached cautiously, running his fingers over the carvings. They were smooth, as if polished over centuries, and yet they seemed alive, almost vibrating beneath his touch. "What is it?" he asked. "It is a repository," Amara explained. "A place where knowledge from other worlds has been stored. Humans once interacted with beings from beyond the stars. This knowledge was hidden to protect it from those who would misuse it, and now it is time for someone to understand it." Elias shook his head. "Other worlds?" "You mean aliens?" Amara nodded. "Yes, the beings who left this knowledge intended for humans to find it when the time was right, and the time is now." Elias felt a mixture of disbelief and awe. The mountains had always seemed magical, but he had never imagined they held secrets of other worlds. Yet standing there, surrounded by the untouched wilderness, he felt the truth in her words. There was something greater than him here, something that required human courage to face. Amara guided him to a small, carved pedestal in the center of the clearing. Upon it lay a device, no larger than a book, made of metal and crystal. It emitted a soft hum, and Elias could feel a faint warmth radiating from it. "This is what the others are searching for," Amara said. "The device has the power to shape worlds. In the wrong hands, it could destroy everything. But in human hands, it can protect, restore, and create." Elias studied the device carefully. Its design was unlike anything he had seen before, yet there was a logic to it, a sense of purpose. He reached out and touched it, feeling a spark of energy course through his fingers. The forest seemed to respond, as if acknowledging his touch. "You understand now why I waited for you," Amara continued. "Humans are unpredictable. They are messy, emotional, and often reckless. But they are also brilliant. You have the ability to think, to adapt, to survive. That is why you are here." Elias pulled his hand back, his mind racing. "So, what, I'm supposed to guard this thing, learn how to use it?" "Yes," Amara said. "But first you must understand the world you live in, the threats that exist, and the reason humans must rise to meet them." She led him back to the cabin, walking in silence. Elias could feel the weight of her words pressing on him. The mountains, which had seemed like a peaceful refuge yesterday, now felt like the center of something much larger, something dangerous. That evening, they sat by the fire and Amara began to teach him. She spoke of distant worlds, of civilizations that had risen and fallen, and of the alien forces that had once threatened Earth. Her knowledge was vast, yet she explained it in simple terms, as if she knew Elias needed to grasp it quickly. "You must understand," she said, "the universe is not empty. There are beings far stronger than humans and many do not wish us well. But humans can fight back in ways they cannot predict. Ingenuity, courage, and willpower, these are our greatest weapons." Elias listened, fascinated despite himself. He had always believed humans were resourceful, but hearing her speak of the universe in such stark terms made him realize how fragile and precious life really was. "Why me?" he asked finally. "Why did you wait for a single human?" Amara looked at him, her expression unreadable. "Because the mountains have chosen you. The device has chosen you. And the universe, it sometimes chooses in ways we cannot understand. But it knows that humans, even alone, can rise to challenges no other species can face." Elias felt a mixture of pride and fear. The weight of responsibility was heavy, yet there was a spark of excitement deep within him. He had come to the mountains seeking solitude, but he had found a purpose far greater than he could have imagined. That night, as he lay on the cot, Elias thought about the day's lessons. He realized that survival was no longer just about food, water, and shelter. Survival was about understanding the world, understanding threats, and understanding the potential within himself. Outside, the forest was alive with sounds, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of a wolf, the whisper of the wind through the pines. Elias felt the mountains watching, testing, and guiding him. He closed his eyes, determination growing within him. He would learn, he would adapt, and he would protect what needed protection. Amara, watching him from across the room, smiled faintly. She had waited years for this moment, and she could sense that Elias was ready. The first step had been taken. The mountains had called, and he had answered. Tomorrow, she would take him deeper into the wilderness, where challenges awaited and secrets would be revealed. But tonight, they rested. And as Elias drifted to sleep, he understood something profound. Humans, even one human, could make a difference in a universe filled with dangers far beyond imagination. The stars outside twinkled brightly, as if in approval, and the mountains whispered promises of trials and triumphs to come. Elias Stone, the man who had sought solitude, had begun a journey that would test every ounce of his courage, every skill he had honed, and every spark of human ingenuity within him. The mountains were quiet in the early morning, but the silence felt heavy, almost expectant. Elias woke before dawn, his body stiff but his mind alert. The lessons Amara had begun yesterday echoed in his head, about survival, human ingenuity, and the unseen dangers that lurked beyond the trees. He stepped outside the cabin and breathed in the crisp air. Frost covered the pine needles, and the first rays of sunlight turned the mountains golden. Everything seemed peaceful, but Elias had learned to trust his instincts. Peace was often just a mask, hiding challenges waiting to appear. Amara joined him silently, carrying a small pack. Her movements were fluid and precise, like someone who had spent years mastering the art of living in the wild. "Today, you will learn how to move unseen," she said softly. "The mountains are home to creatures that watch, that test humans. Not all are kind, and some are dangerous in ways you cannot yet imagine." Elias nodded. His grip tightened on his hunting knife, not out of fear but focus. He had spent years navigating the wilderness, but Amara's words hinted at threats beyond normal predators. He was ready to learn. They hiked through the forest, following narrow paths hidden beneath fallen leaves. Amara pointed out subtle signs, a snapped branch here, a faint footprint there, a broken twig pointing to movement. Always observe, she whispered. The mountains speak in quiet ways. Listen and you can survive. Hours passed and the sun climbed higher. Elias noticed something strange, a low hum almost mechanical carried on the wind. He stopped, straining his ears. "Do you hear that?" he asked. Amara nodded. "Yes, they are near." "Who?" he asked, a chill running down his spine. "Scouts," she replied. "Alien scouts. They have been searching for this place, for you, for what we protect." Elias' eyes widened. He had always believed in being prepared for anything but aliens. He had never imagined the world could hide such threats, and yet, standing there, he felt no panic, only determination. "They are dangerous," Amara continued, "but predictable if you understand their patterns. Humans survive by thinking, adapting, and acting quickly. You will see that today." Suddenly, a rustle came from the underbrush. Elias dropped to one knee, heart racing. Emerging from the shadows were creatures unlike anything he had ever seen. Their bodies were biomechanical, part metal, part flesh, moving with unnerving precision. They had long limbs, glowing eyes, and claws that scraped the rocks and soil as they advanced. Elias' first instinct was to run, but Amara grabbed his arm. "No, stand your ground, observe. They will test, probe, then retreat if they see you are prepared." He steadied himself, watching the creatures. One stepped forward, scanning the surroundings with its glowing eyes. It made a soft clicking noise, almost like a machine learning how to hunt. Elias felt a thrill of fear and excitement. This was a real test, not a lesson from a book. Amara whispered, "Use the terrain. The mountains favor those who know them." She handed him a small rock and motioned toward a narrow ridge. "Distract them, make them chase the wrong path." Elias nodded. He hurled the rock down a nearby slope, and the creatures immediately shifted toward the noise, moving in unison. They were fast, intelligent but not infallible. Elias and Amara sprinted along a hidden path, ducking behind boulders and trees, leading the scouts away from the cabin and the hidden device. The chase lasted for nearly half an hour, with the creatures adapting to every move. Elias had to think quickly, using logs, branches, and the uneven ground to slow them down. He realized how much Amara's guidance had prepared him. He could anticipate patterns, predict behavior, and act instinctively. Finally, they reached a cliffside overlooking a deep ravine. Elias planted a trap. A fallen log balanced precariously over a rock ledge. When the creatures approached, Amara gave a subtle nod. Elias released the log, sending it crashing down into the ravine. Two of the scouts tumbled after it while the remaining paused, uncertain. The creatures hissed, clicked, and retreated back into the forest, unwilling to risk more losses. Elias exhaled deeply, adrenaline surging through his veins. He had survived the first real test. Amara placed a hand on his shoulder. "See, you have what it takes. Humans are unpredictable, that is why you can fight back." Elias nodded, still catching his breath. "But they'll come back, won't they?" "They always do," Amara said. "But now you know how to survive, and soon you will learn how to fight them on our terms." As they returned to the cabin, Elias felt a shift within himself. He had come to the mountains seeking solitude, but now he realized he had found purpose. The wilderness was no longer just a place to hide. It was a place to test strength, courage, and intellect. Back at the cabin, they examined the device from the previous day. Amara explained its purpose in more detail. "This device can alter environments on a massive scale. It can heal lands, create resources, even terraform areas for life to thrive. But it is powerful, and those who seek it do not understand its value. They want control, domination, not protection." Elias ran his fingers over the smooth surface again. "And the scouts, they are here to take it." "Yes," Amara said, "and they will not stop until they find it. That is why humans must guard it. That is why you are here. Not because of strength alone, but because of adaptability. You think, improvise, and survive." Elias felt the weight of responsibility pressing on him, but also a strange sense of pride. He was ordinary in many ways, yet the mountains and Amara had shown him that ordinary humans could achieve extraordinary feats. The following days were filled with training. Amara taught him how to move silently, how to set traps, how to use the forest to his advantage. She showed him how to read the signs of approaching danger, how to anticipate movements, and how to stay one step ahead. One evening, as the sun dipped below the peaks, Elias reflected on how much he had changed in a few days. He was no longer the man who had driven into the mountains seeking peace. He was a guardian, a protector, a human capable of facing threats far beyond imagination. "Tomorrow," Amara said, "we will venture further. The scouts are searching in groups now. You must be ready to face them not just individually, but as a team with the mountains and with me." Elias nodded, determination burning in his chest. He had survived the first test. He would survive the next. And each challenge would teach him more about the strength humans possessed, strength that no machine, no alien, and no force could underestimate. That night he lay on his cot, listening to the forest. The creatures might return. The device might be in danger. And yet, for the first time, Elias felt ready. He had Amara, the mountains, and the knowledge that humans, even one human, could rise to meet any challenge. Outside, the stars shimmered like diamonds, casting a faint glow over the cabin. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying a promise of tests and triumphs yet to come. Elias closed his eyes, allowing sleep to claim him, knowing that tomorrow would bring new dangers and new opportunities to prove the resilience of humanity. When he awoke, the mountains seemed even more alive, as if aware of the change within him. He was no longer just a visitor. He was a participant in a greater story, one that demanded courage, intelligence, and unyielding spirit. And Elias Stone, mountain man turned guardian, was ready to face it all. The morning sun cut through the mountain mist in slanted beams, painting the forest in soft gold. Elias Stone stood on the porch of the cabin, stretching his arms and feeling the familiar weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. The scouts had retreated after the last encounter, but he knew they would return, and soon, in greater numbers. The mountains had no mercy for those who let their guard down. Amara joined him, holding a small bundle of supplies. Her face was calm, but her eyes held intensity. "We cannot face them alone anymore," she said. "There are others here, humans who live scattered across the mountains. If we can unite them, train them, we can create a defense strong enough to protect the device." Elias nodded. The thought of convincing strangers to follow him into danger was daunting, but he had learned something crucial from the scouts. Humans were unpredictable in the best way. Courage, ingenuity, and willpower could turn the tide even against superior forces. They set out that morning, moving carefully along hidden trails. Amara led the way, pointing out the subtle signs of human life: footprints in mud, smoke curling faintly from chimneys, the glint of metal through the undergrowth. One by one, they located isolated mountain dwellers, living simple, self-sufficient lives. Many were wary, hesitant to trust strangers, but Amara's presence commanded respect. "This is Elias," she said to a group of men and women gathered around a small clearing. "He is human like you, but capable of what most humans cannot. He has survived the scouts, and now he asks for your help." Elias took a deep breath. "I know it's hard to trust me," he said. "You've lived your lives here, safe in the mountains, keeping to yourselves. But the threat out there isn't going to wait. These creatures, they aren't like anything we've faced before, and they want something very powerful, something we must protect. Together we can stop them." The humans exchanged wary glances, uncertain at first. But something about Elias' tone, his determination, and the quiet strength in Amara's eyes convinced them to listen. They began to speak cautiously, sharing stories of strange occurrences in the forest. Crops destroyed overnight, missing animals, fleeting glimpses of metal-like limbs in the shadows. By the end of the day, a small group had agreed to join Elias and Amara. Each of them brought skills honed from years of surviving in the mountains: tracking, hunting, archery, knowledge of medicinal plants, and woodworking. The group wasn't large, but it was resourceful. Amara began teaching them how to set traps and alarms to detect the scouts. Elias instructed them on guerrilla tactics, using the terrain to their advantage. They trained in the shadows, practicing movement, camouflage, and coordinated attacks. The humans quickly learned that ingenuity and teamwork could make up for size and strength. One evening, as the group gathered around a fire, Elias noticed a shift in the atmosphere. The newcomers were beginning to see the scouts not just as threats, but as challenges they could overcome. Fear was replaced by resolve, and hesitation by strategy. "Remember," Elias said, pointing to the surrounding mountains, "these creatures are clever. They hunt in packs and they learn from mistakes. But so do we. We can adapt. We can survive. We can fight back." Amara added, "Humans have always survived against impossible odds. You are the descendants of those who built civilizations from nothing, who crossed oceans and deserts, who survived wars and disasters. This is no different. Your intelligence, your courage, your willpower, these are our greatest weapons." Days turned into weeks. The humans, under Elias' guidance, grew stronger and more confident. They created hidden shelters, reinforced pathways, and set traps along the known trails. Scouts were spotted more frequently now, testing the defenses, but each encounter ended with the humans learning, adapting, and improving. One morning, a lookout shouted from a ridge. A group of scouts, larger than before, was approaching. Elias signaled for silence and led the humans to strategic positions. Using knowledge of the terrain, they created false trails and ambush points. When the scouts advanced, they were met with traps that toppled boulders, nets that ensnared limbs, and makeshift barricades that forced them to split into smaller, more vulnerable groups. Elias moved like a shadow, observing, directing, and improvising. Amara worked alongside him, coordinating the humans and ensuring their safety. The battle was tense but short. The scouts were intelligent, but humans, when united and guided, were unpredictable and resourceful. After the skirmish, Elias looked at the humans. They were bruised, tired, but triumphant. "You see," he said, "together we are stronger than they imagined. They may return, but we will be ready. We will learn, and we will survive." Amara nodded. "The device is still safe, but the scouts will not stop. They will send more. We must prepare for larger attacks, for smarter ones, and we must continue to strengthen our alliance." Elias understood. The mountains were no longer just a place to hide. They were now a stronghold, a base of human resilience. Every human in the group had become more than a survivor. They were a defender, a strategist, a fighter. That night, as the fire burned low, Elias and Amara spoke quietly. "They are relentless," Elias said, staring into the flames. "But humans are persistent too. We don't give up easily." Amara smiled faintly. "Exactly, and that is why you were chosen. You embody what humans have always been: clever, determined, adaptable. Even when the odds are against us, we find a way. That is our strength." Elias felt a deep sense of purpose. He had started this journey seeking solitude, but now he understood that his life was intertwined with others and with a greater mission. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was protecting something vital, something that could shape the future. In the following days, the humans grew more confident and the scouts became more cautious. The mountains echoed with the sound of human ingenuity, traps snapping, signals being sent, and humans moving swiftly and silently through the forest. Each encounter taught them something new, and each victory, no matter how small, strengthened their resolve. Elias and Amara continued to study the device, discovering its hidden functions. It could manipulate water, control plant growth, and even alter the atmosphere in localized areas. The scouts had sought it for power, but in human hands, it was a tool to protect and restore. One evening, as they prepared for another patrol, a new group of humans arrived. They had heard of Elias and Amara, of the victories against the scouts, and had come to join the alliance. Each brought unique skills: a skilled archer, a tracker who could move without leaving a trace, and a healer knowledgeable in mountain herbs. The alliance was growing stronger, and Elias felt hope rising in his chest. Humans, when united and guided, could accomplish what no single individual could. The scouts might be relentless, but the mountains were alive with human ingenuity, courage, and determination. As night fell, Elias stood at the edge of a cliff, overlooking the forest below. Fires flickered in the distance, signals of the alliance, hidden from the scouts. The wind carried a faint whisper, as if the mountains themselves acknowledged the growing strength of humans. Amara joined him, her gaze steady. "The scouts are learning," she said, "but so are we. We will face them again, stronger and smarter, and when they come, we will be ready." Elias nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility but also the thrill of purpose. He had come to the mountain seeking solitude, but he had found something greater: a mission, an alliance, and the undeniable proof that humans, even in the face of overwhelming odds, could fight back and prevail. The mountains were no longer silent. They were alive with the sound of human preparation, determination, and courage. And Elias Stone, the man who had bought an abandoned cabin for $1, stood at the center of it all, ready to face whatever threats the universe sent next. The scouts would return. There was no doubt about that. But now the mountains had defenders, and humans, united and clever, would not yield easily. The mountains were cloaked in early morning mist, a blanket of gray that made the peaks look like islands floating in a sea of clouds. Elias Stone stood at the edge of the cliff, scanning the forest below. The scouts had been quiet for days, but he knew better than to trust silence. They were planning something, and he could feel it in the air. Amara joined him, her expression calm yet tense. "They are coming in force," she said softly. "This time it will not be a simple test. They intend to strike directly at the device." Elias' jaw tightened. He had trained with the humans, prepared defenses, and anticipated attacks, but the thought of the scouts reaching the device sent a chill down his spine. "Then we must be ready," he said firmly. "No mistakes. Everyone knows their role." The alliance had grown stronger. Mountain dwellers, once isolated and cautious, now moved as a coordinated force. They had traps along every major trail, alarms made from simple wires and pulleys, and lookout points high in the trees. They were no longer just survivors. They were warriors, ready to protect what humans had fought to preserve. Amara led Elias to the device. It sat on its pedestal, faintly glowing, humming with quiet energy. Its power was immense, capable of changing the landscape itself, and in the wrong hands it could bring devastation. Elias ran his hand over it, feeling the energy surge like a heartbeat. "We can't fail," he whispered. "No," Amara agreed, "but we will not fail. Humans are clever, resourceful, and determined. You have proven that already, Elias, and now we show them what it truly means to face a human alliance." The first signs of the attack came mid-morning. From the tree line, movement, fast, coordinated, and precise, indicated the scouts were advancing in groups. Elias signaled the humans to their positions. From hidden vantage points, the alliance watched, ready to strike. The scouts arrived with mechanical precision, their glowing eyes scanning for the device. They were more numerous than ever, clearly anticipating resistance. Elias' heart pounded, but he focused, recalling every lesson Amara had taught him. They could not overwhelm him with numbers. They could be defeated by strategy. As the scouts moved into the trap-laden forest, Elias gave the signal. Nets snapped from trees, pulling several scouts off balance. Logs toppled down slopes, creating barriers and forcing the scouts into narrow paths where humans lay hidden, ready to strike. Elias moved through the shadows, directing the humans, improvising when necessary. One scout leapt over a trap, only to be met by a well-aimed spear from a mountain warrior. Another attempted to flank them, but a hidden pit concealed beneath leaves swallowed it. The alliance fought with unity, coordination, and intelligence, qualities the scouts could not anticipate. Amara stayed close to Elias, analyzing patterns and signaling moves to the humans. They learn quickly, she warned. Adjust your strategies. Elias nodded. He quickly rearranged traps, setting decoys and fake trails. The scouts followed, predictable yet relentless, and each mistake they made was met with calculated human response. The forest became a labyrinth of traps, human ingenuity turning every hill, tree, and rock into a defense. Hours passed in a tense struggle. The alliance fought tirelessly, neither side yielding. But humans, with their adaptability and unpredictability, began turning the tide. Every time a scout tried a new approach, Elias anticipated it, guiding the humans to counterattack in perfect timing. Finally, the largest scout, the commander, emerged. Taller, stronger, with multiple glowing eyes scanning the battlefield, it seemed almost unstoppable. Elias felt a surge of fear, but it was tempered by determination. This was the moment humans had trained for. This was the test. Amara whispered, "You must face it, alone. Not because you are stronger, but because it cannot predict human ingenuity in one individual." Elias stepped forward. The commander advanced, claws scraping rocks, eyes glowing brighter. It lunged, and Elias dodged, rolling over uneven ground, using the terrain to his advantage. He threw rocks, manipulated traps, and created distractions. The commander adapted, but humans adapt faster. Elias led it into a narrow gorge where rocks could fall and block its path. Using his strength and precision, he dislodged a boulder. The commander lunged, but the rocks crashed down, pinning its limbs temporarily. Elias didn't stop. He improvised further, leading it through more traps until it was weakened and disoriented. Meanwhile, the humans finished off the remaining scouts. Each had fought with courage, showing that strength alone was not the key. It was intelligence, unity, and persistence. The scouts were relentless, but humans were unpredictable and adaptable, and that made all the difference. Elias faced the commander one last time. He noticed a weak point, a joint that, if struck, could incapacitate it. With calculated precision, he delivered a powerful blow. The scout collapsed, hissing and sparking, defeated by human strategy. The battlefield fell silent. Smoke and dust filled the air, but the humans stood tall, breathing heavily, victorious. They had faced a superior force and survived, not through brute strength, but through courage, intelligence, and cooperation. Amara approached Elias, her expression proud. "You see, humans can rise to any challenge. Even when outnumbered, even when facing superior forces, ingenuity and willpower prevail." Elias looked around at the alliance, exhausted but triumphant. The mountains were quiet again, and the device sat safe on its pedestal, its energy pulsing calmly. He realized something profound. Humans were not just survivors. They were warriors, guardians, and creators. They could face any threat the universe sent, not because they were invincible, but because they refused to give up. The alliance gathered around the fire that evening. Wounds were tended, stories were shared, and for the first time the humans felt not fear but pride. They had fought together, using every skill, every lesson, and every ounce of ingenuity to protect what mattered. Elias spoke to them quietly, his voice steady. "You did not just survive. You fought. You adapted. You proved that humans are strong in ways no machine, no alien, no force can fully understand. Today, we showed that courage, intelligence, and unity are our greatest weapons." Amara nodded. "And tomorrow, the universe may send more challenges, but you are ready. Humanity is ready. We are stronger than we know." Elias felt a deep sense of purpose and peace. He had come to the mountain seeking solitude, but he had found something greater, a mission, a family of allies, and the undeniable proof that humans could face any danger and prevail. The device hummed softly in the background, its power untapped, its potential immense. And Elias knew that, with humans guarding it, it would never fall into the wrong hands. That night, he stood at the cliff once more, gazing at the mountains stretching endlessly before him. The stars shone brilliantly, and the wind whispered through the trees, carrying a message of resilience and hope. Humans were not just part of the world, they were its guardians, capable of extraordinary feats, even against impossible odds. Amara joined him silently. The device is safe. The scouts are gone for now. Elias smiled faintly. For now, he repeated. But we are ready for whatever comes next. We've proven that humans fight back, that we adapt, that we endure. She looked at him with approval. And that, Elias, is why you were chosen. Not because you are perfect, but because you are human. And humanity never gives up. The mountains seemed to echo her words, the peaks standing tall against the morning sky. Elias felt a surge of pride and determination. He had faced fear, danger, and the unknown, and he had not just survived. He had led, taught, and inspired. Humans had triumphed, not through strength alone, but through ingenuity, courage, and the unyielding spirit that defined them. As the first light of dawn painted the mountains in gold, Elias Stone, mountain man turned guardian, stood ready. The universe was vast, the threats endless, but one thing was certain: humanity could fight back. Humanity would endure, and humanity would prevail. The Alliance looked to him, trusting, united, and strong. Together they had faced a superior force and survived. And together they would face whatever came next, proving that humans, ordinary in appearance but extraordinary in spirit, could stand against any challenge. The mountains, once quiet, now vibrated with life, preparation, and the promise of human resilience. And Elias knew that this was only the beginning. Humans had fought, humans had survived, and humans would continue to rise no matter the odds. The stars above twinkled as if in agreement, and the wind whispered across the peaks. Humans endure, humans prevail. And Elias Stone, standing tall in the heart of the mountains, smiled, knowing it was true.